Just let people pile in here for a second. What's up, everyone? All right, cool. So on this live, I'm going to be taking questions off Instagram, off Facebook, and off YouTube. Whatever questions you guys have, make sure you pop them in the question box. This is a live for Carbon Diet Coach, my app. If you guys are not familiar, Carbon Diet Coach is basically an algorithm-based app that I helped write the algorithm that basically does automated coaching, nutritional coaching for less than $10 a month. So if you're interested in that, I'll just tell you guys how to get details on that at the end. But our app is on Google Play as well as the Apple Store and has really great ratings, tens of thousands of users. And we've had so many awesome stories of people transforming their lives. So if you have any questions about the app or nutrition or just questions in general, please pop them in the question box and I will address them. Cat, dude, this cat today, just so much attention needed. How to lower cholesterol, 4.9 millimolar, but don't want to take statins. So first off, what I would say is there's a few different things you can do to lower your LDL cholesterol. Your total cholesterol is not something that's really that concerning. It's more the LDL cholesterol and specifically apolipoprotein B. So what I would say is the first thing you can do is increase your dietary fiber intake. That will, fiber can bind to cholesterol and lower it. The second thing you can do is you can exercise. That can lower LDL cholesterol, and lowering body fat will lower LDL cholesterol. But if you reduce your saturated fat intake, I recommend getting less than 10% of your daily calories from saturated fat. If you have really high LDL, I'd recommend less than 7%, and that will lower your LDL cholesterol. But if you're doing all those things and you're not seeing any changes, or you're not seeing enough changes in your LDL, and you really should try to have it under 100, then there's nothing wrong with taking a low-dose statin either. I take a low-dose statin because even after, I very much doubt that Peter Attia says that LDL is not concerning. I very much doubt that Peter says that. But if you're doing all those things, if you're putting in all those lifestyle interventions and you're still not under 100, I do think then a low dose statin can be helpful. And that's what I take because I was doing all those things and my LDL cholesterol was still 150. Now I'm taking a low dose statin, which I haven't had any side effects from. And my LDL is just over 80. So let's see what other questions we have in here. Yes, I still the data over filling shirts. You can find those links in my bio. Let's see. Is eating multiple meals per day bad for gut health? No, I don't know where this myth comes from. I don't know why so many people think that your gut needs a break. There's no evidence that it needs a break. And here's the thing. I think sometimes people don't understand on like a 24-hour basis how these things work. So let's say you say, well, I do fasting to give my gut a break. Okay. We have to compare apples to apples. So if we're comparing apples to apples, that means on a weekly basis, calories are the same. So that, let's say you do alternate day fasting. So sure, your gut gets a break on the day you're fasting. And then what happens on days where you're not fasting? You're eating twice as much if you're going to equate the calories between fasting and non-fasting. And so now, aren't you overloading your gut? The reality is that there's no evidence that fasting is going to be extra beneficial for your gut. If you like doing it, you can absolutely do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's no evidence to suggest that fasting has unique benefits for the gut or anything like that. Let me find Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you chime in here with some questions. The app has me eating around 2,800 calories, and I simply feel miserable eating that much. Any suggestions besides multiple protein shakes? So you didn't really give me a lot of information. If you want to pop down in the comments and try to elaborate on that, I would really appreciate it. But it sounds like you're having trouble getting enough protein in. So first off, if you're having trouble getting enough protein in, protein shakes can be a completely reasonable way to help get in more protein. Guys, all the people leaving comments right now, you're wasting your time. If you have a question, please pop it in the question box. Otherwise, I'm not going to address it. Okay, so usually, I don't know, based on 2,800 calories, it's feeling miserable. It sounds like that's more calories than you're used to. So what I would recommend is, if you are feeling bloated, in most cases, we want people to consume high fiber, high volume, very satisfying foods. But if you're somebody who your appetite isn't that big and you're having trouble consuming enough calories and enough protein, then utilizing processed sources of foods that are a little bit more energy dense to help you fill out your calorie requirements and your protein, that is a completely reasonable way to meet those requirements, as long as you're still getting enough total dietary fiber per day. Hey, Pat, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well. Okay, let's see here. So I'm just looking for another question. Are extreme diets like carnivore safe as long as you like them and can sustain them? So we have to define safe. And here's where a lot of people really mess this up. Is carnivore safe? Well, safe relative to what? Okay? Because when you have to ask a question, when you make a claim, the first question should always be compared to what? Okay, so is carnivore safe compared to what? Is it if you're using carnivore and it has allowed you to lose, like, let's say 40 pounds, it's safer than what you were doing before, because you're undeniably more metabolically healthy when you lose that much body fat. But is it safer than, say, losing the same amount of body fat using something like a more balanced approach where you're eating dietary fiber and less saturated fat? There is no question it is not safe compared to that, or it is less safe compared to that, because saturated fat raises LDL cholesterol and your levels of apolipoprotein B, and that has a direct effect on your incidence of heart disease, okay? This is the Mendelian randomization control trials have made this very, 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 very clear. So Mendelian randomization trials, what they do essentially by using genetic polymorphisms, they can look at your lifetime exposure to LDL cholesterol, okay? When they stratify lifetime exposures to LDL cholesterol, it is striking. You can draw a direct line right through increasing levels of LDL lifetime exposure and the risk of heart disease and the risk of a cardiac event. So carnivore, especially with the fatty meats they promote, with the low fiber, because also fiber, you can do the opposite thing. With fiber, you can, every 10 gram increment of fiber increase decreases a relative risk of heart disease, all-cause mortality, and cancer by 10%. Every 10 gram increase decreases the risk of those diseases by 10%. In carnivore, you're not eating fiber, and a lot of people are eating a lot of saturated fats. So again, people screw this up because I'm not saying that carnivore can't make you healthier. If you are 300 pounds and you use carnivore and you get to 200 pounds, there's no question then you were healthier than what you were doing before. But is it healthier than if you'd gotten to that level while also consuming a sufficient amount of dietary fiber and also consuming lower saturated fat? No, you're not. Okay. And that is the problem, because people don't know how to appropriately compare these things. So again, if you're telling me that carnivore is the absolute only way that you're able to lose weight, then okay, I guess. But I have a really, really hard time. Thinking that that is the only way you're going to reach your goals. But maybe I'm wrong. How many grams of fiber a day is recommended for a woman over 40? Typically fiber recommendations are based on your caloric intake, because it's just difficult to get a certain amount of fiber, after a certain amount of calories. Okay, somebody said, does that mean 100 grams of fiber means 100% risk? No, like no risk of dying? No, you guys have to understand how relative risk works, okay? Relative risk, sorry, real quick, Brooke, back to your question, I'll answer it quickly. I would recommend about 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calorie dietary intake. Relative risk is not the same as absolute risk. What you're referring to is absolute risk, okay? If the absolute risk of, say, heart disease over a 10-year period for somebody after the age of 50, let's say it's 10%. I don't know what it is. I'm just throwing a number out there. Let's say it's 10%. A relative risk reduction of 10% means the absolute risk goes to 9%, okay? It doesn't mean it goes to 0%. So no, eating 100 grams of fiber per day will not mean you can't die. That's not what that means. It just means a relative risk reduction. So if you have 100% reduction in risk, it actually means that your risk is cut in half, okay? All right, let's see here. How do I feel about 3 and 7 days fasts? I don't have any feelings about anything when it comes to this stuff. I have hypotheses and conclusions supported by data. I'm just looking through here for questions. Oh, I see one on Facebook and YouTube. Let's see here. Love the app, sir. App says my maintenance is around 2,900 calories. I'm 6 foot, 195 pounds, 12% body fat, and train a lot. Doesn't that seem low? Not particularly. I mean, my maintenance, I'm about 210 pounds, about 8% body fat and calipers, and I also train a lot. My maintenance is about 3,300 calories. The thing is, if it estimates your maintenance too low, then you will lose too much weight, or you will not gain at the appropriate rate based on what your target is, and the app will adjust up anyway. So again, with carbon, the beauty of it is adaptive. The algorithm is adaptive. If same thing goes, I have so many people, like, they'll put the numbers in, it's giving me too many calories. It's giving me too many calories. Well, if that's truly the case, if you hit that calorie amount and your goal is weight loss, then you will not lose the amount of weight that the app predicts, and it will adjust your calories accordingly. So there's no reason to get worried about whether or not the app has it right, because the app is going to respond based on how your body responds, as long as you're checking in regularly. So if you've been using the app for a good period of time, like over 4 weeks or over 6 weeks, and you've been consistent with checking in, if the app says your maintenance is 2,900 calories, then that's what your maintenance is, because the app has been tracking. Because your maintenance is going to be your calorie intake versus what weight you've lost or gained, and the app does an adjustment to figure out what the difference is, and it can figure out your maintenance from there. It's a lot of complicated math on the back end, but it's essentially how it works. If you know somebody's calorie intake and you know what their weight's doing, you can determine their maintenance by math. The calculations are somewhat complex, but the overall concept is pretty simple. All right, let's go to, I love this. Appreciate you and all your team do, bud. The app helped me lose 45 pounds this year. Love that. Awesome. Let's see here. What is your position on cold plunges? Are they worth it? It depends. It depends on what your goal is. They're all the rage right now. But claims around cold plunges, increasing energy expenditure, you can find just as many studies that show no increase in energy expenditure as those who show an increase in energy expenditure. And the increases in energy expenditure in the studies are typically pretty small. So I don't really think there's really a big effect there. There's definitely not a big effect. I don't know if there even is any effect whatsoever. But the things they do is they appear to reduce muscle soreness, improve recovery from exercise. So that's the plus side. Some people say they love the way they make them feel. They love the way they make them feel. Dopamine release, whatever. I'm not a dopamine expert. That'd be more of a question for Andrew Huberman. I think for some people, just getting up and doing something hard sets them in the right mindset for the day. And that's, again, a completely reasonable reason to do that. But the downside to ice baths is if your goal is to build muscle, the data is very, very, very clear. Ice baths reduce muscle building. So if you resistance train and you're doing ice baths, you're actually inhibiting muscle growth. Now, I'm not saying that you can't grow muscle doing ice baths. What I'm saying is you will not grow as much muscle doing an ice bath as somebody who's not. Okay. Now, if your goal is to, like, for example, be an MMA fighter and you're feeling really beat up and sore and you've got another training session coming up, hey, ice bath might make sense for somebody who's doing that, because they're not trying to be the most muscular human they can possibly be. Okay, so here's a myth. Somebody says that's only true within a certain window of training, though. That is not the case, okay? That has been a supposition that some people have said, well, if you're outside this training window, maybe it won't negatively impact things. There are no studies that have directly addressed that. So perhaps it's true, but there's no evidence to suggest it is true. And so we cannot make that claim. You cannot make that claim without the corresponding evidence. And the study that I've seen people use to back it up is a study where they did an ice bath further away from training and saw that there was no decrease in testosterone. Increases and decreases in testosterone are not the same thing as the measurement of actual muscle mass. Small decreases or increases in testosterone are not going to change muscle mass. I thought there were. No, there are not. And so one thing I will encourage you guys to do is to not be spreaders of misinformation, okay? Most of you don't do it knowingly, but so many people, and even professionals, do this. Dr. Tara Stewart was on the Diary of a CEO podcast and was actively spreading misinformation. She said, oh, there was a study where people thought about lifting weights, and in 2 weeks, their muscle mass increased 13%. This is a person with a PhD. This is a person who's published original research, and they are absolutely dead freaking wrong about this. They probably heard it from somebody who told them something, and they trusted them, and they just regurgitated it without even bothering to look it up. You guys, we can be part of the problem or we can be part of the solution. And if you haven't actually looked it up yourself, do not make the claim, okay? So, for example, there was a study where they had people visualizing finger adduction, which is that, and people's finger adduction got significantly stronger over 12 weeks by 13%, but they did not increase muscle mass by 13%. Okay, so again, please, if we're going to be making claims, let's at least make sure we've done a modicum of looking into it, not just because somebody who has DR in front of their name said it. And guys, don't take it from me either. Like, look up some of the stuff I say. Like, don't just take my word for it, okay? Like, I do not want followers who are brain dead, who don't question anything I say. Please question everything I say. Okay. I'm not mad at you, by the way. I'm just using this as a chance to educate. So, we can either be part of the problem. And listen, I've been part of the problem before. I've shared stuff that ended up being BS. Now, it wasn't really in nutrition. It was in other stuff. But I'll always correct myself. Once again, guys, if you have questions, please drop them in the question box so I can address them. So cold plunges, again, depends on, what your goals are and what you're doing it for. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's see here. Okay, hang on. We got a question on Facebook and YouTube. All right. Is it common to retain more water when starting a new exercise regimen? It can be. If it's a very novel stimulus and causes increased muscle damage or part of the cytokine response to exercise is an inflammatory response. And that inflammation typically has some edema and water associated with it. So yes, if you do a session that's very hard, especially like lower body, where a lot of muscle tissue is being damaged and there's a lot of inflammation, it can cause some water retention, yes. Bernadette says, I love the app. I've been using the app for 7 weeks and I'm experiencing really good results. However, my weight fluctuates a lot. Should I switch to trend weight? So trend weight basically tries to smooth out some of the weight fluctuations that you experience and remove outliers. I've been using it for 2 years. Before that, I used the 2-week rolling average, which was how we originally constructed the app. I haven't noticed huge differences for me. Both worked great. The biggest thing to make the app accurate is not whether you pick trend weight or the regular one. It is to simply make sure that you're weighing yourself consistently and putting in if you can weigh yourself daily and log each weight in the app in the coaching section, that is going to ensure the most accurate adjustments for the app because it has more data points to base it off of. If you're only weighing in once a week, your weight can fluctuate all around and it's going to be much harder for the app to make, precise adjustments. All right. Another question. Hey, Dr. Norton, do you think being in ketosis could increase energy expenditure due to increased gluconeogenesis? Some studies have shown somewhere around a 500 calorie increase just by being in ketosis. I know the study you're referring to. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible because there are some very technical parts of this study that you need to understand. But essentially, there's 2 ways to measure energy expenditure. There is a direct measurement, which is a metabolic chamber, where they put you in a metabolic chamber. They're looking at your oxygen consumption, your CO2 consumption, and how much urine you excrete, because you kind of need those data points in order to figure out energy expenditure, for lack of a better term. Or you can do what's called doubly labeled water, which they take water, they have you drink it, and the water has an isotopic label at the hydrogen and the oxygen, okay? And that doubly labeled water, they can track that label and they'll take your breath and your urine and they can use that to approximate your energy expenditure. Now, I want to be very clear. The reason they use doubly labeled water is because people can do it free living and they can get more data points over a longer period of time. Metabolic chamber, somebody has to be in a chamber during that time. You can only do it for a few weeks, really max. Okay. All of the metabolic chamber studies that I'm aware of show no difference in energy expenditure between ketosis versus non-ketosis. Doubly labeled water studies, like done by David Ludwig, do show about a 400 calorie increase in energy expenditure. Here's the problem. Doubly labeled water overestimates energy expenditure with low carb diets. Okay. And here's the real teller for this. Ludwig is a very big proponent of low carb diets. In their clinical trial registration for that study, they list body weight, body composition, BMR, and they were going to have people wear accelerometers to track their activity. Okay. There were no differences in BMR between the groups, so the basal metabolic rate. There was no difference in physical activity between the groups. So where is this 400 calorie increase in energy expenditure coming from? And It cost thousands and thousands for the number of people they did doubly labeled water on to assess that, to get the doubly labeled water, to assess the study, to do the analysis. It was probably, I would bet, around $500,000. How much money does it cost to slide a scale under people's feet and have them stand on the scale? Virtually nothing. Then why did they not report body weights in the study? Because if they were really in a 400 calorie increase in energy expenditure per day, you would see differences in body weight over time. They did not report body weights. And to me, that is a huge red flag. That has to be something you report, because energy expenditure is a mechanism, but body weight is the outcome. And so if your body weight doesn't change, what's more likely? That somehow you're violating the laws of thermodynamics, or that the measurement you are using to assess energy expenditure may not be accurate? I promise you it's the latter. So that being said, there's no evidence in the highest quality randomized control trials that ketogenic diets lead to increased energy expenditure. And to further that, we now have over 20 controlled feeding studies where people either were in metabolic wards or they were provided with all their meals, and they looked at low carb versus low fat diets, same calories, same protein, and overall, over these over 20 studies, the overall effect was there was really no difference in weight loss. If anything, they favored the low fat diets by a little bit. So again, you can make whatever argument you want around fat oxidation, energy expenditure. It just doesn't hold up when they actually look at real human outcomes. Okay, let's see here. Let's take another question off Instagram. There are so many people who give opposite claims on the same topic: insulin resistance, fat storage, etc. Where do we get studies to get data? Well, this is where it gets tough because, first of all, I would say, what is the background of most of those people? Just because somebody has DR in front of their name does not make them an expert, okay? Even in nutrition, if you ask me a question about, say, like, pregnancy levels of vitamin A intake, that's not my wheelhouse. I'm not going to be a good person to tell you that. So why, oh why? Well, Gary Brecka is not a doctor. He's not even a chiropractor. He has a BS, a bachelor's in biology. That's it. Good degree, great. I can tell you, as a BS in biochemistry, after my 4-year degree, I knew just enough to be dangerous. I was not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, period. And people who aren't in science, they have this feeling that, well, if you're a scientist, you're a scientist and you just know all about science. All you need to do is go to the list of Nobel Prize winners. You guys can look this up. Look up the number of Nobel Prize winners who believed in absolute quackery and buffoonery in some other area of science. It is a laundry list. It's not just a couple, it's a lot. We have this idea that smart people will not get indoctrinated in bullshit because they're smart. No. Smart people are the most likely to be indoctrinated into bullshit with cognitive dissonance because they will use their own intelligence as a reason as to why they would not be indoctrinated. I couldn't possibly believe in bullshit. Look at me, I'm smart. And that is why you have psychologists, you have chiropractors, you have naturopaths, you have all kinds of people who talk about nutrition as if they're experts with no real expertise. Medical doctors are not nutrition experts. Chiropractors are not nutrition experts. Naturopaths are not nutrition experts. And even amongst PhD nutritionists, there are some who I would look at them and go, you're indoctrinated in bullshit. No one is immune to their own biases and the potential for cognitive dissonance. Period. What you need to do is listen to the way that people talk. Okay? For example, ice baths, all right? I personally hate cold water. I don't like it. Don't like it. I'm not going to do it. But I can talk honestly about the benefits of ice baths. Period. Even me? Yes, even me. Now, I'm very lucky that I had a fantastic PhD advisor who really went hard trying to break down my biases. Okay? And he shut down so many biases I had. But anyone and everyone has biases, period. I will never try to tell you guys I don't have biases. Of course I do. I am a human being, period. Okay? So, listen to the way people talk. So let's go back to ice baths. If I was indoctrinated in hating ice baths, for example, I wouldn't give you guys the positive benefits of them. I'd just say, it's going to inhibit muscle gain. It's going to slow down your metabolism. It's going to do all these things. So if somebody isn't giving you the other side of the argument, even with carnivore, okay, even though I think carnivore overall is really, really stupid, I'm saying, hey, if you lose 50 pounds on it, yeah, you're going to be healthier than you would be if you had kept those 50 pounds. But are you as, healthy as you would have been? How do you identify your own biases? That's easy. If something comes out, if somebody makes a statement or there's a piece of information that comes out and you say, and your first knee jerk is, who funded it? Well, it wasn't long enough. Well, they didn't have enough people. Instead of just actually reading it and thinking about it and working through it, there's your bias right there. People who freak out about who funded a study. If your only criticism of a study is who funded it, it says more about your bias than it does the researchers. Okay? So what I will say is, let me just point this out very clearly. You have people that are like, for example, heart surgeons, right? Talking about nutrition. People are like, well, they're the number one cardiologist in the world. They're the number one cardiac surgeon in the world. That's great. That doesn't mean they know anything about nutrition. I have a PhD. I can put DR in front of my name. If you walked into your operating room, if you were going to have heart surgery, and I walked in and I'm like, hey guys, you can take the day off. Don't worry about it. I'm a scientist. I'm a doctor. I'll do heart surgery on you. You'd look at me like I had 3 heads, right? You wouldn't let me do heart surgery on you. So why are you taking your nutrition advice from people who are not nutrition experts? So the first thing is their background actually specifically in the thing they are talking about? Is their background in that? And do they provide a devil's advocate argument? Do they provide nuance and context for what they're talking about? I have had very negative interactions with the carnivore community. I think carnivore is pretty stupid overall. But when you ask me the question, I don't go, screw carnivore. There's no positive benefits. It sucks. Blah, 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 blah. I'm sitting here again, making a devil's advocate argument and putting nuance and context into it, saying, hey, if you lost 50 pounds on it, you're probably healthier than you were before, but it's not as healthy as if you would have lost it doing this more balanced approach. Okay? So again, you all have biases, and here's how powerful cognitive dissonance is. I want you guys to really listen to this. This is how powerful cognitive dissonance is. There was a study done back in 2009 where they took Republicans and Democrats, and they presented both groups, with information that would either directly refute, or confirm a belief that they had. Guess what? For both groups, it didn't matter. Both were equally bad. For both groups of people, both things that refuted or things that supported their preconceived bias were equally as effective as reinforcing that bias. So literally, if you take somebody who has a strong bias against something and you present them with evidence that will directly refutes the position they have, most people, it actually simply makes them double down. They become more entrenched in their position. That's why 99% of people don't give a damn about the right answer. They just care about being righteous. Most people don't ask a question to find the answer. They ask a question so hopefully somebody confirms what they already believe to be true. Period. You guys really have to question yourselves. You really do when it comes to your own biases. And so, again, if somebody comes to me, and I've had to do this so many times, and I start having an emotional reaction to a study, that says something about me. Okay? That says something about me. And so I always try to think about what I believe to be true could be wrong. So the fundamental job of any real scientist is to consistently try to disprove what they believe to be true. I am always trying to disprove what I believe to be true because I would rather get the right answer than be right. Because I want to get the best results for people. Because I want to get the best results for myself. We should care more about getting the right answer than we do about being right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right, let's see what other questions we got. Holy crap, you guys went hard with dropping them in the question boxes. Whew. What do you think of fasting without liquids? Unequivocally stupid. All right, moving on. That's one that there's not a whole lot of nuance to. ADHD supplement, go see a professional. Where to start to lose 100 pounds of fat? Well, without trying to sell you too much, Carbon Diet Coach, we've had multiple people lose like over hundreds of, like dozens of people lose over 100 pounds of body weight using the app. But I think the biggest thing is to just, I don't know your specific situation. Usually when people become really obese or overweight, there's a lot of underlying things that need to be unpacked. But I like what my friend Ethan Suplee said. And Ethan is an actor who lost over 300 pounds. And he said, if the house is on fire, just get out of the house. You can spend time figuring out how the fire started afterwards. But if the house is on fire, get out of the house. And what that means is just start. So many of you guys have paralysis by analysis. I don't want to start unless I have the right thing, the right diet, the right exercise program. If I put 2 plates in front of you, you probably have a pretty good idea of which one is healthier and which one's more conducive to weight loss. You just have to start. It's going to be imperfect. You're going to screw it up, but you just have to start. Like begin walking the path. Be okay with screwing up. Okay, I'll give you guys an example of this. And I've never struggled with my weight, thankfully. But I've really struggled with personal relationships, okay? Whether it be friendships, whether it be romantic relationships. I think if I went and got tested when I was young, I was diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm quite sure I would be on the ASD spectrum as well, especially with how it manifests in my conversationally and relationally. And for so long, and even to this day, I would struggle with, I don't want to start making these changes because what if I do it wrong? What if I do it wrong? What if I do it? I'm going to do it wrong. Of course, like when you start making changes, like I'm going to screw it up. The question isn't, am I going to screw it up? The question is, if I don't start walking the path, then it's 100% guaranteed I'm never going to get to my goal, to have healthy relationships in my life, right? So I have to start walking that path. I have to start making those changes. And I'm going to screw it up. But that's why when you screw things up, you learn. You learn what didn't work. And hopefully you're open enough to learn why it didn't work. What you don't want to be is completely non-self-aware and continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over. And I've seen this with so many people, and it even includes me. And it's honestly like it doesn't mean somebody's a full-blown narcissist, but it is a narcissistic characteristic to not be self-aware. And so when you're going for this, just be cool with making mistakes, man. Like, just start. And I think the other thing is, like, really have a big reason as to why when it gets hard, because it's going to get freaking hard. It's going to get freaking hard. It's going to get freaking hard. So what's your why? Do you have kids? Do you have people you care about? That's got to be your why. Like, that's my why. Like, I know how much I care about people, especially the people close to me, but I also know like how I've been making them, how I've made people feel. So again, like, I'm going to screw it up, but like, if I don't put that work in, it's never going to change. And I'm just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over. So again, what I would tell you, I mean, again, I'm doing this thing that I have a bad habit of. I'm relating your problem that you have with something with me. But just start. And I think you said you tried a bunch of different diets over 15 years. Stop looking at it as a diet. Stop looking at it as a diet. This is a journey. Okay. Yes, you need to create a calorie deficit. That's the mechanism that's going to cause weight loss. But how you do that is very, very different. Okay. So you got 2 kids. Awesome. So when it gets hard, think about, and this isn't for shame. Okay. I don't want you to go to shame with this. Okay. Because a lot of people do. I know I do. Don't go to shame. When you are having a hard time, think of those kids. Think about, what do I want my kids to see me do? If my son was in this position, how would I want him to act? Okay. I'll give you one more example of like starting the process. And again, if you need like X's and O's help, Carbon Diet Coach can help, nutritional coaching can help, all that kind of stuff. Like if you follow the advice on Carbon Diet Coach and you're honest with yourself, it will work. But you gotta keep yourself engaged. You gotta be consistent. You gotta be adherent. Okay. And that's harder. Okay. So when it gets hard, think about those kids and think about, what would I want my son to do? Okay. Like I think about what I want my son to do. I think about like when I'm struggling, how would I want somebody who was with my daughter to act towards them, like that sort of thing. Like that helps me. But like, you're going to screw up and it's okay. Just begin walking the path. And I'll give you one more example. So when I started in this industry was 20 years ago. Okay. I wrote my first article for bodybuilding.com in 2002, right? When I started in this industry, I wanted to be a world champion natural bodybuilder. Okay. I started walking that path. I didn't get that. I never became a world champion natural bodybuilder. I got something way better, because I started walking the path. And you know, when you walk the path, you're going to trip over branches, you're going to trip over rocks, you're going to fall down. But you know what's going to happen when you start walking the path? When you learn those mistakes, when you learn where those branches are, when you learn what made you fall down before, you're not going to fall down so much. And you're going to see, even if like your path kind of doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, other paths will open themselves up to you. And you can take those paths. And that's what's happened with me. Okay. But you got to start walking it. And I know so many people, I can tell you, indecision is a decision. No, not making a choice is a choice. And usually it's the worst choice, because at least when you make a choice, you're going to learn something. Whether it's right choice, wrong choice, you're going to learn something. Okay. So walk the path. Walk the path. That's the best advice I can give you. I know I saw a lot of people ask if I'm going to debate Gary Brecka. Gary tentatively agreed to a debate in an Instagram DM. But ever since then, we've been trying to hook it up. I'm not saying he's backing out, but have not heard back from him yet. So hopefully that will happen. I don't like the idea of, I feel like this is like Tom Brady playing against a middle school football team. But, you know, a lot of people seem to think he knows what he's doing. And so I would like to show people that he is actually quite full of it. So hopefully that happens. Trying to schedule several other debates this year and several other podcasts. So yeah, we'll see. I've already debated Sean Baker back in 2018. So you can find out. It was on Mark Bell's podcast. Okay, guys. So if you need nutritional help, oh, thank you, John. If you have any questions, our support team is fantastic. So make sure you reach out to them. You know, and if you have any questions, you know, feel free to shoot me a DM. I do try to check those as much as possible. But yeah, and I also have a book called Fat Loss Forever that might help. You know, carbon is the X's and O's. Fat Loss Forever will give you some more strategies. Anyways, yeah, guys, our app is Carbon Diet Coach. If you need help with nutrition, it's $9.99 a month for customized nutrition coaching, algorithm-based nutrition coaching that I had a huge hand in writing that algorithm. I basically tried to create this app thinking about if I was going to take what I do as a nutrition coach and put it into an app, what would it look like? And this is what we came up with. And we have tens of thousands of users. Very, very happy. I think our rating on the App Store is like 4.8 stars. We have thousands of reviews. If you guys use Carbon, quick, leave a message. Let me know what you think of it. I know a lot of people are already jumping in here saying that they love it. JRE episode. Guys, here's another thing with Joe Rogan podcast. Listen, I think it's funny. I think when you get like famous, people think that like there's like a club and everybody's in the same club. I am not on the same level as Joe Rogan. I can't just like call up Joe and be like, hey, bro, I'm in Austin. Want to do a podcast? I'm lucky that Joe even knows I exist in terms of like the opportunity his podcast gives. If he asked me to be on a podcast, I would fly there tomorrow. Like, I'd fly there today. Okay. So yes, I would absolutely do another episode of JRE. I was on it in 2018. I would absolutely do it again. But you know, that's up to him. He's got a lot of really important people he's trying to get on the show. And I'm just some nutrition geek who likes lifting. So we'll see if it happens. If not, I'm going to continue to try and expand my own reach so that I can help more people. Because at the end of the day, that's what I really care about. So please, you know, get a chance to check out our app. I want to say I really appreciate you guys being on this live with me. Some great questions on here. You know, make sure you give Carbon Diet Coach a follow. We put out great educational content and really appreciate that. Jim, the book name is Fat Loss Forever. It's my fat loss manifesto, I guess the best way to put it. Yeah, and that's it. I appreciate you guys joining me. Much love. I know I can be surly at times, but I love my job. I love what I do, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to have a chance to reach so many people. Those of you who are on our app, the app is called Carbon Diet Coach. Truly appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your business and your trust. And again, I'm just very honored and grateful. So appreciate you guys, and look forward to doing it live again. Catch you next time.